Hello and welcome to an episode of Atomic Vinyl Reviews. My name is Jacob and today we're here to talk about Doctor Who, the long-running sci-fi series started by the BBC almost 60 years ago now. And man, I've been wanting to talk about Doctor Who, or at least toying with the idea of doing a video on it since all the controversy about season 11 and 12 went down. For those of you who don't know, those are the seasons who are starring Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor and have the man, the legend, the fucking imbecile himself, Chris Chibnall, as showrunner. And oh man, oh man, oh man, there's quite a bit to unpack. So especially in relation to the episode that dropped about a week ago at time of filming, called The Timeless Children. It was the finale episode of the second season, the 12th season to be, but the second season of this version of the show. Oh, and where to start? I'm going to start by opening this up first, I'll tell you that. It's just ginger beer, by the way, but if I actually drank alcohol, then this would be, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about my history with the show and stuff like that. So, I'm a longtime fan of Doctor Who, and, of course, I'm fairly young. I'm like 22, 3. I don't even remember how old I am. But I'm around that age. And so, naturally, I haven't been around for, most of the classic Who era back, spanning those almost 60 years. But, when I was younger, I did watch quite a bit of, the classic Tom Baker Doctor Who just on TV whenever it was on. I have fond memories of that. I don't remember much about the show, just really enjoying it, and that's, I grew up watching a lot of fairly sort of like B-movie sci-fi stuff. A lot of that sort of stuff I really enjoyed, hence why I got so into Godzilla over here. But one of the things I definitely enjoyed was Doctor Who. Now, come round to sometime in the early 2000s, and we have the Doctor Who coming back, and the show comes back. It's a continuation, but at the same time, it's kind of a reboot. It's a bit of a mixture of both because they had a long break. And they brought the show back with Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper, and run by Russell T Davies, and I just loved that show. I watched all of it, and since then I've watched the majority of, New Who numerous times. I've been a huge fan since then, and I have been for many years. Until there were issues in the show's production. Like, the thing about Doctor Who is, like, some of those episodes were absolutely phenomenal. Like, some of the best TV out there, some of the best sci-fi out there, especially, the whole, Christopher Eccleston seasons were phenomenal. David Tennant was a powerhouse as the Doctor. And that whole run, especially everything to do with the Doctor and with Donna Noble as the companion. That sort of era of Doctor Who was like the best shit out there, guys. And, then we had Matt Smith come along. I was a bit apprehensive to him taking the role, but you know what? He totally grew on me, and some of that stuff is absolutely fantastic as well. And he was a great choice for the role, even though, like, it took a little bit longer to warm up to, but it got there pretty quickly after that, And then we had, what's his name? The eyebrows, Peter Capaldi. Perfectly cast, by the way. Absolutely phenomenal casting. And by that point is when I'd say the writing was really starting to show some fucking where. But as the show still felt like Doctor Who, the casting was perfect with Peter Capaldi. He was phenomenal in the role. Like I said, the writing then was pretty subpar by that point, but I was still on board, because that man at the helm could keep that ship a hold. And, you still had Moffat writing the stuff, and for all the complaints that Moffat gets, he has written some pretty bleh stuff at some points, and really, overblown a few things, but the man did great work. When he was good, he was really good, he's... And compared to these last few seasons, even the worst of Moffat's stuff is stellar, I'd say, but, oh, man. By the way, as you can tell, this video is just gonna be a ramble, because, my thoughts still aren't really all that cohesive. I've, had some time to sit and think about this, and, hear some other people's opinions and stuff, but it's still hard to articulate, especially since, there's a lot of context to outlay, but, basically everything up to that point, especially with New Who, was pretty solid. At least it had a consistency of actually having, feeling like Doctor Who, being invested in the characters. And, the thing about Doctor Who is it's kind of hit and miss sometimes. Even the best seasons have dud episodes or some more sort of less interesting moments. And that's pretty consistent with all of Doctor Who. But seasons 11 and 12 absolutely fucking miss the mark. Not only is the casting all fucking off, the writing is atrocious and boring. Really boring. And it's like they cobbled together all the sort of dud episodes of the previous sort of Doctor Who episodes and tried to make a season based on that, but shoved a bunch of agenda into it and tried to anyway, I'm getting too far with that. Let's cut back a bit. So the initial thing that sort of concerned audiences, for lack of a better word, was the casting of Jodie Whittaker as the first ever female Doctor. And this is a very controversial topic, so I'll have to use my words very carefully. To begin with, I'll say this is a decision that I was not fond of, and after experiencing it for 2 seasons, I am still not on board with it. There's a number of reasons for this, and pardon if you can hear children screaming in the background. They're just playing outside in the neighbor's yard. Don't mind that. But there's a number of reasons that I am not a fan of this decision. The primary one is the reason behind it. Perhaps the reasons were actually really genuine, and perhaps the showrunner, Chris Chibbs, actually believed that Jodie was the best actor out there in the industry for this role. All of that stuff, for the reasons that just based on her acting style and that she would fit the character, yada yada yada. I don't believe that for a freaking second. The reason that he even took the role of showrunner, he didn't even want to be the person, behind these seasons. He said his conditions for doing this was that he will only do it if he can cast a female as the role. And look, I probably should backtrack and say I don't have any problem with female-led movies. Nothing like that. No, it's hard for somebody who's skeptical of what I'm saying. It's hard to sort of interpret it that way, but I'm serious. I don't have any problem with female-driven roles in our media, in anything like that. I have absolutely no problem with that. The more female-driven shows and stuff, the better. completely no issue with that. It's retroactively going in and basically just changing an established character that I have an issue with. I would feel the same way if, for example, they were rebooting the Alien franchise and they changed Ripley to a male character, for example. I would be probably honestly more pissed because I'm more of an Alien fan than I am a Doctor Who fan, but I am a huge Doctor Who fan. It's not to say that I'm not, but this has nothing to do with that. This is the people who made the change. They didn't do this because they thought it was good for the show, because they thought that this is something that they can, improve the character with and would be, just fits with the show and the legacy and all of that. It's because they wanted to leave their mark on the show, to create headlines and hype. And it is freaking patronizing, I would say, if you're a woman. Just would be my sort of opinion about this. But it's even more evident with what they did in this last episode. Let's keep on track. So they cast Jodie Whittaker. I was a bit apprehensive, but because, I could tell that this wasn't done for the right reasons, but, in the back of my, I always like to try and stay positive about this stuff. So, I tried to be optimistic. I watched the first episode of the, season 11, and you know what? I thought, maybe it'll be okay. This episode was just fine. It wasn't as bad as I had initially thought. And, then season 11 kind of continued, and it didn't get any better. It got worse at times. It just felt off, and I was like waiting and waiting for the moment when this version of the Doctor would kind of stand out and be like, you know what, you go girl, you did it. But it didn't happen, and we go into season 2 and still didn't happen. It doesn't feel like the Doctor. And I had a little bit of hope, like, even though I could sense that this was done for more ideological reasons and stuff that I'm definitely not a fan of, but I had hope because, I'm a big fan of the show and I wanted it to work. Even though I was not supportive of the people doing it or the ideas being thrown out, I was still hoping, please show, surprise me, make it work. It's, I don't know. I could still watch the episodes and not get, like, full on bored. For the most part, I mean, sometimes I did have to just kind of pause it and go watch YouTube for a couple of hours and get back to them sometimes, but for the most part, I like to watch things all the way through in one go. But I did think there was a chance this could work, because in the Peter Capaldi era, even though the writing was going right down the shitter, it was going downhill, I was not really a fan of the show around Capaldi, but his presence and his gravitas and his passion for the role really soaked through. And there was still some amazing stuff in there, like, what's that episode called? I think it's called Heaven Sent, the one right before Hellbent, which is the one that everyone has issues with. But the one right before that, where Capaldi is in this, like, weird Time Lord time maze, where he basically has to die over and over again, and over the course of billions of years he eventually breaks through this like solid crystal wall to escape this sort of monster to get to his TARDIS. And it's all really introspective, and it's just him. He's the only one who's supporting, carrying that show. That was fucking amazing. One of the best episodes of Doctor Who ever, I'd say. It was a really good episode. So there were gems in there. But one of the things that I actually really liked about Capaldi's era was the version of the Master that they had during that era. In that era, they had Missy, so the Master had regenerated into a female, which, had the same sort of apprehension, people had the same sort of apprehension as they did with, the casting of the Doctor as a female. And, I can totally understand why, but it actually worked. She was cast brilliantly. The actress was phenomenal in the role. She felt present in the role, and she felt like she really could be the master. She was really menacing and perfectly done. So there, even though like I completely disagree with the reasoning behind this, and it feels like a really gimmicky thing to do, which is another reason I was just like, even if it would have worked, I'm like, please don't. Doctor Who really has been in the past pretty hit and miss. For the most part, these sort of felt like really middle of the road episodes. From middle of the road to just bad, in all honesty, with these episodes. But the thing that was really lacking in these episodes, from both these seasons, was caring about the characters. So aside from recasting the Doctor, they also added like a whole group of people to, you know, be her fam. Jeez, I hate that word. Please never use that word again, Doctor Who. It is cringeworthy beyond belief. But so her fam. We have what's his name? Ryan. We had Ryan Graham, or as some people, I don't know why some people who review the show call him Graham, like he's a freaking gram of rice or something. His name's Graham, played by Bradley Walsh, and Yaz, or Yasmin. So Ryan was the grandson, or like in-law of Graham, or Graham as it's correctly named, and he was meant to have dyspraxia, which is some sort of condition to do with balance, and like he had trouble riding a bike and all that sort of stuff. That was forgotten about really fucking quickly. That was like a big deal in the first episode, and mentioned slightly in the second episode. And I think it was completely abandoned for the rest of the series, which is hilarious. Graham is played by Bradley Walsh. He was a bus driver guy, white dude, old guy who was married to what's his name, Ryan's grandmother, and she died in the first episode. And like the arc, their arc during the first season was actually pretty good. It was about Ryan accepting Graham as his, you know, adopted grandfather, and their relationship, and that was probably the strongest thing in the first season. Unfortunately, it was kind of resolved just before the end of that season, and then from like the finale episode of season, 11, Graham kind of like, he used to be the best thing in the show, and then he kind of was just placed as comedy relief, unfortunately. And then we had Yaz, who was like this Indian police lady. She was just there. It's like a meme now. She has like no presence in the show. She's just kind of standing off to the side for most of the show, and then like suddenly in this last episode, The Timeless Children, out of nowhere, absolutely out of nowhere, Graham goes up to her, because like the whole group's like split up, and he happens to be in the group with her and some like weird future people who are trying to do some stuff with Cybermen. And out of nowhere, he goes up to her and starts telling her how bloody amazing she is, how she's better than the Doctor in his eyes, and one of the best human beings ever. It's so awkward. It is so awkward, because they had no, like, I can't even remember them interacting in a previous episode, and then this comes out of nowhere. It honestly felt like he was trying to hit on her or something. It was really awkward. She's done nothing in this series. That's awkward, but I think it's something about propping her up just because she's going to be the only remaining one of the fam to stay on, because apparently Bradley Walsh and Tosin Cole, who are playing the other two, Graham and Ryan, are leaving by the next episode, the Christmas special, if they are doing it during Christmas, or if they're doing it as another New Year's thing or something weird like that. So yeah, that's the fam. They take up a lot of space in the show. and they don't really let the Doctor, like, I don't really think that it would have helped that much, but especially in season 1, the Doctor really was just there as like exposition and magic alien lady that didn't really, like, we didn't explore anything about her in that season. And I mean, we found out some stuff about her in this season, but even then it like had no effect on her really. I mean, really, she came out of it like not changed, and I was never really a fan of this one's personality. It's kind of, it goes from, it's like quirky and passive aggressive is kind of like her personality in this, and it doesn't feel like she really cares about anyone all that much. Like there's a lot of open moments where she could have been really compassionate towards the people around her and what they were going through, and really kind of express, some connection with that. But usually she just kind of like laughs it off and stuff like that, and it seems so out of character for the Doctor. It was also kind of infuriating because I have heard interviews with the first female Doctor, played by Jodie Whittaker, that's right, with her, where it turns out she really didn't do all that much research into the character. She really wasn't a fan of the character or knew much about it till then, and she didn't bother to go back and watch all of Doctor Who or anything like that to get a good understanding of how to be this character. And that's really unfortunate because it comes off a lot of the time as she's just just kind of doing vaguely David Tennant and Matt Smith kind of like quirky stuff, but without any of the serious tragic backstory and the kind of more authoritative presence that they could have. And it's really a bit of a bummer about that. And the main reason I'm filming this is because the series, these 2 seasons had these issues, but like I was just kind of in it like, you know what, I don't really care, and like I don't like some of these decisions, but I'm okay to wait this out. Wait till, she finishes up, and then we, ditch Chibnall. We ditch Chibnall, we ditch Jodie, and we actually get some new people in who know what the fuck they're doing, and then they, set the course back to like actual Doctor Who. And I'd be fine with that. That could just be like a weird thing that just happened and that we could just pretend to forget about. Kind of like in the Doctor Who, that movie from like, what was it, the 90s or something, where he said that he's like half human or something like that nobody considers canon. However, this last episode, The Timeless Children, really showed the fucking arrogance and the fucking nerve, and really confirmed some things that I felt about the Chibnall and the direction of this series. This episode went out of its way to really try and cement itself into the canon, to just be noticed, to flip everything on its head. And I've heard like people trying to spin it positively, like, oh, it's just trying to do something fresh and different and yada yada. And you know what? Perhaps some of the stuff, some of the canon, stuff that they change within this episode, maybe it would have been fine under a different showrunner, under some competent people. I don't think anyone competent would have really gone in that direction. I'll explain that why in a little bit after I, explain what I'm talking about. But my main issue is the series since Series 11 has been tanking. People have been complaining for very good reason about the quality of this show. And instead of, having a lighter touch on things, instead of trying to make it better, they doubled the fuck down and they cement themselves and all the stuff that we disliked about this direction, and they tried to ingrain it not only into the these few seasons, but what they did is they retroactively tried to ingrain it into the very very essence of the show, of the character and the past, and it's just of like trying to flip everything on its head, and that is freaking disgraceful. Man. And you know what? I was watching this thing, I wasn't even like mad, because I knew what was about to happen, like before it happened. It was just like, I don't know, if you were following the rest of the series, it almost felt obvious that they were going to do something like this. Like, it's not even because some people had like leaks and stuff out there and were saying stuff, but like even without that, it would have been obvious. So by that point, I just didn't really care. I've just been watching the show, kind of going, let's see how they fucked up Doctor Who tonight. And I was just going through the show, not even feeling mad, but like just retroactively talking about it like this. And also recently, I was rewatching some interviews with like David Tennant and Matt Smith, and I was just thinking back to how good the show really used to be. How, like, literally the show could make me tear up and fucking cry. I cared about the characters and what happened to them. When Donna had her memories removed and lost all of that experience with the Doctor and had to go back to being normal, that was freaking heartbreaking. She's a phenomenal character, and I wish she was still in the show, and I still think about that sometimes and think, man, that was amazing TV. When there was that episode where there was that whole thing with the Time Lords and the Master, and the Time Lords are like trying to bring Gallifrey back from the weird dimension that it was in, or from the Time War, and they're gonna ruin the Earth because of that, and the Master was around, and basically that scene where Wilfred, Donna's grandfather, was in that like control glass box thing that had all the controls, and it was about to be filled with radiation, and then he knocks 3 times. And that whole scene with the Doctor, who could have done so much more, that was freaking like it tore on your heartstrings, that did. And there were so many of these moments. So many of these like amazing moments throughout the show. I was just picking from the David Tennant era there because it's some of the best stuff. But you can go way back, like even the Dalek episode, even with Christopher Eccleston and all that sort of stuff. Those are all fan-freaking-tastic. You just look at how really immaculate of a show it was, how special it was. And now it's just freaking boring. People are very, very openly criticizing this show. Everyone is mad. Nobody likes this shit. And they're just like, well, all the stuff that you loved, now we're cramming this fucking thing that you hate into all the history of it. And so that's why this episode, I would say, is probably the worst episode of Doctor Who. Now, it's not the most boring episode. The effects are good. It's fairly entertaining as just like a piece of TV. I would say it's like a middle of the road. To okay, like a pretty okay Doctor Who episode, just if it were not a Doctor Who episode, if it were some random whatever sci-fi show that wasn't, if you ignore all the, what would you call it, the ideological stuff they're pushing, if you ignore the agenda, if you ignore the lore they're ruining, if you ignore all the bloody meta stuff they're trying to say at the audience at some points. If you ignore all that and just go at it from like a production value, like, yeah, the story from the last couple of episodes all links together fairly okay, yada yada yada, it's fine. But what makes it the worst episode is the lack of bloody respect to this franchise. Okay, let's actually talk about this episode, because if you guys haven't watched the episode and haven't watched anyone else's explanation of it, you're just listening to a mad dude with long hair ramble and drink ginger beer with no real context. Oh man, ginger beer is so good. Anyway, so the Timeless Children. This is like the finale episode. So there's been this thing going on since even the first season where they've been chiming at this mysterious thing, the Timeless Child. These random space rags told the Doctor about this in like episode 2 or something of season 11. And so it was this thing going through these episodes. In season 2, somewhere at the beginning, the Master shows up again. So no explanation for why he's back, why he, hasn't learnt anything from being Missy. That kind of was a bit annoying, especially considering how good Missy was in her whole arc. But yeah, he's going straight back to being evil. He's played by, I think, like I don't know where he's from. He looks like an Indian guy, but he's actually one of the somewhat decent actors in this series. He goes way over the top, like, a lot of the time, especially in this episode. When he first showed up, he was way over the top. He acts like he's doing, like, a bad Joker impression half the time. Then in the second episode he showed up, he was actually a lot more restrained and pretty good. But then he just goes back to being a freaking idiot in this episode a little bit again, but I don't really mind. He's actually, as far as the shit that this series has been doing in these past 2 seasons, he's actually one of the better things about it, so I'll give him a pass. Later on in this episode, we get Captain Jack Harkness just appears out of nowhere to tell the fam to tell the Doctor a message, to not give the lone Cyberman what he wants. Then later on in the series, the lone Cyberman shows up, and he's actually a fairly decent villain. He actually feels a bit menacing, his design is pretty cool, and the actor does a decent job. But of course they're gonna ruin it, so don't worry about that. Don't you guys worry. You got nothing to worry about. From old Chibnall at the helm, ain't nothing gonna remain good for a good time. For a long time. Anyway, I don't know why I'm doing that accent. So he shows up, and it's like in like that house where Mary Shelley was writing Frankenstein. And it's this period piece, and this weird thing was going on, and the house is being all weird, and it turns out that the Cybermen have this weird space suit that looks like the effects from the Terminator 2 movie of the liquid metal stuff, and it turns out that's what the Cyberman wants. And of course the Doctor gives the Cyberman what he wants, despite Captain Jack telling him not to. So that happens, and so we have a few, people established throughout the series that are gonna come back in this last episode. So then over the course of the last 2 episodes, we go back to some time in the distant future where the last of the Cybermen and the last of the people are fighting. Long story short, though, the Master takes the Doctor through a random portal that's there and into the ruins of Gallifrey, because that was a thing that was established, that he destroyed Gallifrey for some reason, including all the Time Lords. No explanation as to why. And basically he puts the Doctor in the middle of some room and takes it through a PowerPoint presentation while he talks about the hidden past of the Time Lords and the Timeless Child. In the meantime, the Cybermen and the people are doing their fighty thing, and the Master also invites the Cybermen dude to come and play at his house for a play date and to team up, which it doesn't make much sense that the Cybermen would oblige him, but whatever. And this is throughout this is where we finally learn about the Timeless Child and all this bullshit that ruins everything. In this PowerPoint, the Master finds out that the Time Lord civilization has been a lie this whole time. That what actually happened, the creation of the Time Lords, who they really are, is that on Gallifrey, like millennia ago or whatever, time is a bit complicated in this series, so I don't know how long ago. But a long time ago, there was this lady, native person from the Gallifrey. I don't remember the name of the species that they were called, but her name was like Tayun or something like that. She looked like really up herself and just kind of like stared into the distance and was all silent every time they showed a clip of her. Turns out she was the first person on this planet to invent space travel. So what did she do? She flies the fuck away from Gallifrey all on her own as the first space traveler and explores all the places around. And that's when on some random planet there's this big green screen set, and then there's like these two green screened in giant pillars and a big space portal up the top. You know those big space portals? They're the thing that everyone fights over in like every Marvel film and whatnot. So there's one of them thingamabobbers. And under it, she finds a random little black girl. And we find out that this little girl is the first person to ever, whatchamacallit, transmogrify, what's the word? Regenerate, that's the one. So this little girl was the first person ever to regenerate, and no, she was not a Time Lord, she was not from Gallifrey. And of course, this isn't even a spoiler at this point, but she was the Doctor. And this is the fucking stupidest thing. The stupidest thing, because guess what? Brilliant space exploration Gallifreyan lady. What she does after finding out that this little girl can regenerate, she fucking experiments on this little kid. And it's portrayed as this, like, wow, daring, brilliant scientific thing. She's literally just got a kid and she's killing her over and over again to experiment on her regenerating. And then, of course, she discovers how the regeneration thing works, and then she splices that into herself, and then she becomes a black guy. And that's how the Time Lords were born. They were, they genetically modified themselves from the Doctor, who, of course, now has amnesia. She doesn't remember any of these pasts because, like, they didn't happen in, like, the real canon. This is fucking not canon anymore. This is so dumb. Fucking hell, I'm just speechless at this point. It's just like I knew they were gonna do something stupid, but, like, I really wasn't, like, the sheer fucking hubris to do something like this when you know that nobody is a fan of what you're doing, that you're, like, how much you have to hate a series to do something like this. This is like fucking Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi and all that sort of stuff. This is the same thing. The same thing. He just, except for that one, didn't retroactively destroy the previous films to an extent. That one, it just kind of destroyed Luke's character in the future. This goes back and tries to insert all of this into all the past. Because whenever you're watching The Doctor, you're like, oh, she was that little black girl. And, I don't know. Again, like, I know that it sounds bad to criticize the fact that it's a little black girl, because, like, it's not like a, how do I put this? This is really hard to word. It's, like I keep saying, it's not that the character is like characters that are little black girls or anything. That's not that that's a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. It's the blatant agenda pushing of trying to force these, like, very PC politics into, like, a well-loved and respected series that, and you know, just the absolute vainness of doing that. Like, if they went out of their way to create a new character of any race or gender, that's not a problem. Like, for example, Martha was a black girl in the pre-David Tennant era, and she was one of the best characters on the show. So it's not about that. It's just about going in there and trying to force everything onto this character. But even forgetting all that, it's just the fact that they tried to make the Doctor Space Jesus. Like, I know in, some of the David Tennant era stuff and, a lot of stuff that Moffat wrote does overhype the Doctor a little bit. He gets a little bit on the freaking self-righteous, preachy side and making, like, everyone already knows who he is and all that sort of thing, and they, like, scared of him because of his reputation and stuff. And I'm not a big fan of that, but this is taking it to a whole nother level. Like, the Doctor is not meant, like, to be this infinitely special thing. He's meant to be that to humans, for example, to us as the audience, but he's not meant to be that to the Time Lords. He's just meant to be just some guy who, disagreed with the way things were being done on his home planet, who ran away in a TARDIS, in a blue box, to go explore the universe, just to get away from all that. And he just occasionally went to Britain for some reason, took some random people from there, and they were his adopted friends for however long the actors wanted to be cast in that role. And that was the premise of the show, and it was exploring, great worlds, and had really great stories and great characters. And now it's just about all this shit. I don't know. The thing is, this season 2 was actually starting to kind of get a little better. They were getting away from some of that agenda stuff. They were somewhat more interesting. Like I said, the Cyberman and the Master were making it more interesting. They were better characters, better villains than in the previous series. But they decided, let's just tank all that, because we haven't had enough of this stuff. And we just want to fuck it up. I don't know, guys. I'm sorry this video has been, like, I can tell already this video is going to be really incohesive and not a good video. But I really don't feel like doing a second take of it right now. It's just, like, I don't think I explained myself very well. But hey, the show didn't give a crap, so why should I? Anyway. My ginger beer is done, and it was warm by the end anyway, so... kind of a good metaphor for this show. Started off so crisp, and so fizzy and delicious. And it just had that right spice and sweetness, and it was so good. Then by the time you go through all this shit, it's all warm and flat, and you just wish you could go back to how it was. You wish it wasn't like this anymore. It's also empty as well. It's a hollow shell of its once fizzy and delicious self. And that's Doctor Who. That's why I don't feel like any of this is canon anymore. I don't care. Like, when you get to a point in a show where, the characters meant the world to you at one point, but you get to a point where you're actively rooting for the bad guys to kill off the characters, which is what I found myself doing. Whenever the Cybermen or whatever were after him, I was just like, please just kill them, please. Please do it. I was literally sitting there thinking, I would not care at all. I would have no feelings if they killed off the Doctor. You know how crazy that is? Do you know how many decades this show has been going on for, and how passionate people are and have been about this show, and how much love there is for this franchise and the character? And yet here I'm just sitting for the first time ever during these seasons being like, you could kill them off right now. I don't care. Like, whatever. It would honestly just be like a cheap thrill at that point, just watching them all die and be like, oh, that was cool. Okay. But nah. Got more to go through. Yeah. Another funny thing is, in this episode we had like this crazy old dude who was one of the last people on this planet, of like these last few people. He was a really good actor. I think people said he's from Game of Thrones. I don't watch Game of Thrones, so I don't know. I've heard that's going to shit as well, so I'm like, even more apprehensive about watching it. But he was really good. He actually had screen presence, and like he was such a side character, you know. Um, I I was really hoping they'd just retcon and be like, oh no, this guy's actually the Doctor, and then he could take over. I'd be like down for that. And the funny thing is, at the very end, like the Doctor is about to sacrifice herself to destroy, you know, the I haven't even got to the Time Lord Cybermen, have I? Oh my god. I was gonna end this episode, but so much this episode just it's the shit that keeps on shitting. um but yeah, this old dude comes out of, like, she's about to kill herself, and then the old dude who I was just like hoping he survives, because I wanted to see more of him in this series, because I actually liked him a lot more than even any of the companions in this episode or anyone else. I think him and the Master and maybe the Cyberman dude were the only three people, like, semi-competent people in this episode. Like, all of them were pretty poorly written, but still they were at least more interesting to watch than the fam. And he comes out of nowhere and is like, no, I'll blow myself up. I've been doing this for a while. And then she's just like, okay, and she fucking runs off and escapes and leave this poor old bedshitter to die. And it's like, fucking hell. Do you even remember that part from that I already brought up about David Tennant and when he wouldn't let Wilfred die because he could do so much more, and this really dramatic thing, and that it would be his pleasure to die for him, and but in this one it's like, no, she's like, okay, and she fucking runs off. It's like, they're not fucking trying. They're like, I was actually hopeful when season 2 was going on. I was like, you know what? It's less shit than the previous season to an extent. Like, I don't really care about the characters still, but at least, like, the Cybermen are kind of cool. The Master is occasionally good, then occasionally a bit retardedly crazy, which can be entertaining in itself. I'm like, you know, let's see where this goes, but then we get this stuff. But just to fill you in, the Master's plan was basically he killed all the Time Lords, preserved their bodies. Then what he wanted was that weird space silver goose liquid to go into him to help him control the Time Lord bodies or something, or to just have more Cyberman in tech. I don't know. But basically what he did was he created Cybermen out of Time Lords so that they would regenerate. And they come out in this all, like, crazy costume with the big, like, Cybermen with frowny faces, with the big Time Lords, like, crests and their capes and all of that. And, you know, people have really criticized those costumes. I mean, it's Doctor Who. It's a little schlocky at sometimes. It's a little camp. So I'm like, it's really not something worth complaining about in this episode, in all honesty. I mean, they looked kind of cool. Like, I have no problem with the set design of any of that sort of stuff. Gallifrey looked good. The effects were pretty good. All of that stuff was fine. It's just what they did to the rest of this, just the way they freaking doubled down all the shit that everyone hates about this series that really gets to me. Like I said, I could have just passed these couple of seasons by. If they didn't do anything like this, I would have just been fine with them just regenerating the Doctor, a new showrunner. Let's keep it going. Let's start it and make it, you know, just go back to the good old days with it being better, hopefully. Hopefully. We don't know. The BBC is a little fucked at the moment, so we don't even know if another showrunner would help. It might not all be Chibnall. But regardless, this episode was the one where I'm like, I'm not treating any of this as canon. As far as I am concerned, when Capaldi's Doctor was out in the snow in that last episode that he was in, he just freaking freezes over. He's dead or some shit. Like that is the ending of Doctor Who in my mind at the moment. All of this is probably like a fever dream he's having just before dying, or not even that. This is just Chibnall's bad fanfic. Is more accurately what it really is. You know, the funniest thing, apparently, like, I didn't see this on the actual Wikipedia page, but on Chris Chibnall's Wikipedia page, like a couple of days ago, apparently they edited it, so it said, Chris Chibnall was the producer of the award-winning show Broadchurch, yada yada yada, and is one of the people involved in ruining the long-loved series Doctor Who, something like that. And I'm just like, oh my god, that is beautiful. I wish it was still up there. I checked his profile. It's not. They took it down. They replaced it with Daddy's showrunner on Doctor Who, yada yada. But yeah. Mr. Chibnall, if you're watching, please freaking resign. Please, this is not good. You're, like, I get it, you want to make your freaking mark, but people care about this show. People do. Like, maybe they shouldn't. Maybe, like, people shouldn't care about, you know, entertainment and TV shows like this in general. But regardless, they do. And for some people, what's canon kind of is important. And quality of writing is important. And what you're doing is you're just creating hurt and suffering. And the only good thing we've gotten out of these seasons is people's replies to it and videos about it. Not mine. Mine's a right mess, as you can tell. It's just a shitty rant. But there are some really witty and fantastic replies about this one. There's a YouTuber called The Critical Drinker. He has a really great video, really hilarious, about all of this stuff. Nerdrotic has also been really on top of this stuff. I think he complains a bit too much about everything, just a tad, but he's pretty on point most of the time. Like, he's one of the people who really predicted that this was going to happen, so he's been right on top of this stuff. Constantly, so good on him. You know, there are a lot of YouTubers out there who have done really great takes on this, and that's the positive stuff that has come out of this thing. Same with, you know, The Last Jedi, same with, you know, the Star Trek stuff that's been going on. Again, I haven't been paying attention to modern Star Trek. Same with the Game of Thrones stuff, which again I haven't been paying attention to, but you know, it's the same sort of story with all of these things. And I just can't wait till we actually get some decent Doctor Who again, because like, I'd be okay with the show just being off for a while, but personally I would really actually prefer if they just made it good again. Yeah, I think what they need to do is they need to just reboot the damn thing. Just like have the Doctor just recast somebody else, somebody really good, and just make it like one of those Doctor Who TV, like the Doctor Who movies, where there's no explanation whereabouts in the timeline he is. He's just the Doctor, and he's just there doing his classic Doctor thing, and we just start off somewhere in some corner of time and space, and we just have an adventure, have a great time, and do a whole lot of running. I believe that's gonna be it for this episode, guys. Again, I'm really sorry I was just all over the place with this episode. There's so much more that I could probably still talk about, and I really should have kind of planned it out a bit more, but again, the show doesn't care. Why should I? That's it for this episode, guys. See you in the next one. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I just a man baby who needs to wear his neck beard and his, what are they called, fedora? Or am I on point, at least a little bit? I don't know. Could be both. We don't know. But regardless, R.I.P. Doctor Who, I guess. I don't know. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Peace.